Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the CXO show. My team has told me not to say what episode number it is because they want to change the sequence of all the episodes. So I've been very careful not to number this particular episode. But welcome to the CXO show anyway. As by now, hopefully, you know, the CXO show is a show that features some of India's most successful professionals in a host of different domains. But since we are a learning and skilling and placement company, we tend to invite a lot of HR people and L&D people because we have a lot of love for them as our immediate clients. But yes, the CXO show is one where we want to invite some of India's most renowned, successful professionals in their domain, because like we said, the professionals in these companies are the people that really run these companies, run the economy for us. And I don't find too many shows that throws too much of light on these successful professionals. The objective, of course, for our listeners is so that they pick up a few real, practical, implementable tips, tricks, strategies from these professionals in terms of how they can succeed in their own career and these particular domains. So that's about the CXO show. Today with me, I have Mandar Kulkarni. How are you, Mandar?
I'm good. Thanks,
Good.
Swapnil.
Both of us, but before we started the recording, both of us decided to shed our coats so that we could give this particular interview a little bit. We want to make these interviews more fun. And like I was sharing with Mandar, Mandar, this is the best part of my week when I have these conversations with my colleagues from L&D, HR, and even other domains.
Sure.
Okay, are you excited, Mandar, about this interaction?
Absolutely, Swapnil, and thanks for having me on the show.
Okay, so now the first part, Mandar, is the only part that is going to seem slightly formal because I have your introduction with me, which I'm going to try to do justice to. So I'm going to read that out from a piece of paper. But from that point onwards, we are going to shed all formalness from this particular interaction, right? So Mandar Kulkarni is the head of people development for Middle East and South Asia at Smollan, India. Mandar is a seasoned professional with more than 15 years of experience in the people development space. Under his leadership, Smollan has won the top employer certification for 5 years in a row. In his previous roles, he has worked with Reliance Retail and Reliance Brands, where he handled training for luxury brands like Gas, Hamleys, and Brook Brothers. He's passionate about setting up L&D functions from the incubation stage, setting up the rhythm for business training, setting up the L&D functions in newer territories and countries, and building an agile L&D team and partnering with businesses and customers. His keen interest in leadership development and driving learning initiatives is what makes him a new age leader. In addition to being a double postgraduate with degrees in retail management and human resources, Mandar is a certified trainer from Dale Carnegie and is certified MBTI practitioner and has won this People Excellence Award during the recent global meet at Smollan. He recently also completed a tailor-made leadership excellence program from IIM Kozhikode. In his free time, Mandar likes to be behind a camera and is also a certified photographer from the Photography Society of India. Welcome to the show once again, Mandar. You seem to have a very interesting profile, a man of multiple interests, clearly.
Sure, I think that's what really makes the job more easy for me in terms of, one is the lens, which I really like to do photography on my free time. The same lens usually I use at the workplace to look people with different dimensions. So that makes my role very, very, close to my heart, both.
Very interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting. So, Mandar, one of the things that I like doing towards the start of these interactions is run me through your educational and career journey, right? Largely from the time you started, so to where you've gotten so far. So run our audience through that, just so that they get to know you a little better before we get started with the other questions.
Oh. So that's me, Swapnil Mandar Kulkarni, born brought up in Mumbai. Like everybody has their dreams here, I do have my dreams here. I've done my schooling from Mumbai itself, done my graduation in BA in economics. Then after that, I pursued my master's in in the retail space from Lala's, and then of course I pursued my HR post graduation from Wellington. So that's the some bit of the study and the journey has been from the curriculum standpoint in terms of the retail is very close to me since the beginning of my career, right? It's been, as you said, 15 plus years in the industry. I think what I live, talk, breathe is retail essentially, and I'm very passionate about it. And then of course the learning, which is another passion which I really like to be with people. And as you said, it's a very interesting week for you. Likewise, I like to be with people, understand different, the sides of the people. That keeps me on the toes essentially.
Correct. So you're one of those professionals, I understand from your background, that's always been very clear that they wanted to be in the broad HR domain. Is that correct? Because you did your master's in HR, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, so I started my career with into the sales bit. 3 years I was in the sales domain. I worked with SR for a shorter time, and within Reliance Retail as well, I've worked in sales. But eventually, I've seen that a lot of time I'm spending coaching people, training my colleagues, writing processes, adapting quickly to the new ways of working, and I think I loved training my colleagues. So I think there my eyes were always on so-called doing work in the HR space. And I think I really quickly found the way. It said, right, once you walk your essentially the purpose, you collide with the destiny. And it happened to me. I collided with my destiny 15 years, 14 years back, essentially into the learning space.
Learning space. So yeah, that's so interesting, right? That you, I find this very fascinating how certain people growing up have great clarity on what they want to do. And like you said, right, you had to get into sales and then immediately I think you had a realization that HR was your domain. And you've been walking that particular path for the past 15 years or so.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's So where does this love for HR people learning, where does this come from? Any origin story there, or you think that's just the way you've been always?
I think the story goes down the line a decade back. I think my eyes were always on the learning and the HR domain. Essentially, thought while I was doing that, it adds a massive, value, one to the organization, second to the people you work with, right? And I think that's what the trigger was all about in terms of how this role really helped me inspire people, be around with people, and essentially help them achieve what they essentially want to be, right? The true potential of a person. When you start building a capability, essentially you get that person through a journey, get there where he wants to be. And I think that gives me a very personal satisfaction. That is the passion, I thought, which probably sales could not give me much. But being in the other side, I really thought that that's what essentially looks like my go-to.
Correct. Very interesting, right? So I find it also interesting that you spent a few years doing sales, so you got actually a hardcore, possibly understanding of how business works, and then for you to step into the HR or the learning and development domain gives you a very solid base on which to be in the HR or L&D domain, right? I'm sure you'd agree because I think I've said this in a couple of shows even earlier that I think the best HR people, the best learning and development people that I have come across are the ones that have a real understanding of business, right? Because that understanding of business that could have come from them working in sales or other business functions earlier, or even as HR and L&D professionals actively participating in the business activities is so important for them not to be alien to the realities of stuff.
Absolutely. I think the organizational performance we have seen, it has moved largely by a good notch up when we did a lot of programs essentially. And one of this area of interest which I mentioned was around the partnering with business. I think there's a solid synergy between how a learning and business can come together and deliver the business objectives, right? The era has gone where you create your solutions on yourself, or on a no man's land. Essentially, if you take together business, I think that journey is altogether different, and I think that's what allows me to sit on the show with you. I've seen that success happening because of very solid partnering with the business. If you have a standalone own learning set of things which is not adding any business value, I'm sure in some point of time you will become irrelevant, one to the business, second to your organization. So I think that's one key thing I always keep in my mind when I have any conversations with my business team.
Correct. I think that's. Let me ask you this question first up, actually, right? How have you seen the learning and development landscape evolve over your last 14 or 15 years? What are the 2 or 3 things that really stand out from you, possibly from when you started 14 or 15 years back as an L&D and HR professional to right now? Throw light on 2 or 3 areas that you think.
All right. I think firstly, if you want to get into that direction, and very short 3 years down the line, of course, a macro view I'd like to share. But if you look at pandemic has changed all the way the things were happening, right? The work has changed, the workforce has changed, the workplace have changed. Now, essentially, if you talk about the workforce, I think there we have seen a big shift in the way we are doing learning now. One is the sentiment of the new gen people who have come in, and we have a mixed bag here in Smollan as well. Each one have their own aspirations to grow in their own career, right? And it can't be that one size fits all approach works anymore. Like we used to have one program, some point everybody was pushed into that program. But I think that's a very traditional outlook. Now, if I talk about learning itself, so much have changed. The entire learning has changed over a period of decade, if you look at it. And the lens which we always use is having a very people-centric learning approach. What I essentially mean here is I'm putting that role into the center of designing a program. I think that's a big merit we have seen, which essentially means that it's not a push strategy, it's a pull strategy, because the person sees a value in sitting through the program. So that's the first thing I feel that's a big shift I've seen. Earlier, it was the managers nominating somebody for a heck of it, and the person is sitting into the program. So it's more of a push, not a pull strategy by having a very contextual role-based programs.
Got it.
The second shift I've seen is the blended learning approach. So there are all sorts of learners, right? Now let's talk about this show which we are talking about. Somebody will learn quickly from this show. The wisdom probably it will take somebody to learn or read a book. So there are all sorts of learners. I think that is one thing we all should understand. There's a kinesthetic learner. There is somebody who will have more audio-based learning, and hence podcasts become so popular. There are some people who really learn from the experiential part, and then some learn from a very formal setup. So I think that is something we quickly picked up as an organization. And I've set up as a L&D head 2018, and we did an entire overhaul where we looked at saying that more mass personalized learning happened. And the last one is around how you really bring in the new age matrices into the learning space. Be it your unique employee coverage, or be it about really talking about the impact and the value you are generating to the business. So I think essentially, if you ask me, these are the 4 or 5 shifts I essentially see in the learning domain over a decade. And there are massive shifts in terms of the way people want to learn, the way they want to get engaged, and also they want to contribute back. The aspirations are very high, let me tell you, in today's world. And I think it's important to capture that when you do your capability mapping.
Yeah, so interesting. I'm just going to, Mandar, try to do a quick summary of what you said, right? Just in a pointed way. So what I hear from you is that you think over the last 10 years, the way learning and development is changed in the corporate world is a huge shift in aspirations, as you said, of people, which I think is a big positive myself, right? Because that keeps pushing the bar. It keeps making the bar higher and higher for us as learning and development professionals. So I think That's one. Number two, you've seen a big shift where one size fits all does not work anymore, right? We have to make learning more personalized. We have to give our learners more agency over what they want to do, right, or what they want to choose to learn. I see that. You see that as a big shift. The third shift that you spoke about was that focusing on not a push strategy where you shove people into a classroom with the help of their managers, but more creating enough interest so that there's a pull strategy where people actually volunteer in some way to get into the classroom, right? The fourth one that you're seeing is blended approach as a way of doing stuff which probably didn't exist earlier. And fifth, like you mentioned, that different learners have different styles of learning. So you need to really be able to adapt to the different styles of learning. Somebody could learn more by reading, somebody by watching, somebody by experiential, so on and so forth. So it becomes our responsibility in a way to cater to each one of those requirements where it's possible to cater to them. And of course, like you said, last but not the least, keeping a key eye on the business metrics and working together on that. So you had some great, I asked for 2 or 3, but you gave some fantastic 5 or 6 points in terms of how the learning and development industries change, right? What are the big shifts that you are seeing, Mandar, in terms of the actual new age employees, right? And team members from in a post-COVID world versus a pre-COVID world? Are you seeing any massive changes there in their expectation beyond what you mentioned?
I think I like to bring one interesting fact. I was reading about the gig economy, and gig is
Yeah.
as we speak, right?
Yeah.
It's a myth that it's only in US, Brazil, Japan, China. If you look at it, 3 million people already are part of the gig world here, right? They're doing
Yeah.
multiple jobs. They are doing, like, a simple example of Uber and Ola.
Yeah.
They are engaged with both the vendors at one
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
Then the ambidextrous part is here. So I think the gig is here as we speak. The second interesting fact I've seen the shift is between the machine learning and humans. So I was reading an interesting article where it says that currently the stats says that around 32% of the work are done by machines, 68% of the work are done by humans. By 2040, the stat says that close to 45% of the work is going to be done by machines and the rest 55 by humans. And which means I'm talking about next 7-8 years. It's not very far.
Yeah.
So I think that's a very interesting shift happening without knowing, right? That shift is happening, and it's coming in a very exponential way because of the technology adoption, because of the way, in fact, the work models are being designed softly. If we talk about the teal organizations, where like Netflix is one amongst them, the teal organization where they expect that maturity of operating is very high. It's more self-managed. That's one bit. Second is the organizations are moving essentially to a very network-based kind of a work environment, very cohesive in terms of the way the work is happening. There are also organizations moving away from a very mundane setup to having very project-based kind of a work. So I think there's so much happening, but one thing which is very important, that where your policies are redefining, your work is redefining, learning stays again at the center of everything what we are doing. That's very interesting thing. I want to bring it at the notice. And learning faster is again a very important aspect in this shift.
Correct. Learning faster. So the big shifts that you are seeing in terms of the new age employee, the new age team member, and in turn the new age learner is you see a shift happening, like you said, a big shift already in where gig economy, right, is one, the movement towards machine learning and AI as something that we're seeing probably the sprouts of that right now, not in a full-blown way, but over the next 5 years, I'm assuming we will see a lot more action in that. And I don't mean to make a plug of our upgrad programs here, but yeah, even we have made such a huge shift in both our soft skills programs, our leadership programs, our data and tech programs, with a huge focus on AI and generative AI, even in soft skills and leadership, right? In topics like that, that is has made our program so much more relevant than before. And like you said, you also mentioned the fact that you're seeing more project-based work happening. And last but not the least, I think the important thing at all points of time in human history is the importance of constant, like you mentioned, constant learning and upgrading yourself, right? I think that is the most important thing. I think all learning and development professionals feel passionate about that. And when I look at even your CV and what you've done, clearly you do as well, right? Mandar, if you were to give some advice to learning and development professional just entering the workforce, right? And my next question is going to be around advice that you have for a non-L&D professional entering the workforce. But my first question to you is, if any learning and development professional is just entering their first job right now in 2023, fresh out of their college, what would your 2 or 3 pieces of advice be to that learning and development professional?
So it's an interesting one. I usually go on a lot of usually campuses and have that conversation, right? So a simple synergy here or 2 cents would be, one is what you ought to be. So what you ought to be here, it's on the hard skills. Very important when you enter the organization. You should be high on your data interpretation skills. And I'll talk more from a skills perspective because that will really help somebody to get there, right?
Got it.
One is definitely on the data interpretation part. Usually look at the data. See, today's problem is enough of data available. Earlier, there was a lack of data. In today's world, if you look at, there's so much of data available, making meaning out of it. I think that's the first thing what I ask my team to wear the hat when they enter my team, right?
So and interesting,
4 to 5 years of experience, essentially, I'm talking about. The second thing is around the project management. They should be high on project management. The time has gone that I will keep doing one thing, right? So I think having the appetite to multitask, quickly shift the gears between the projects. As I said, we are also a lot of project-based organization. We have multiple clients. So I think the skill here is the cognitive ability to process the information, to quickly get there in terms of understanding the ask. And the third and not the least would be operate with clarity. I think that's a hard fact I have learned essentially. Once you operate with clarity at that level, no matter at what level you get into the organization, you will thrive from the way you are starting your journey. So these are my 3 quick top of my things.
Yeah, but this is for L&D professionals entering, right? I love some of the things that you said, because every time I thought of them, I'm like, this is extremely useful for a L&D learning and development professional entering, but it would be useful for anyone else, right? I don't think it's specific to them. And I'm also going to pick your brain on advice that you would have for just generally young professionals beyond these 3 or 4. But let me do a quick summary and just add my 2 bits on this as well, right? Mandar, I think that you've hit the nail right on the head when you spoke about data interpretation skills, right? And trust me when I say that, and we should probably have a conversation offline as well. I've been going to company after company talking about and saying that today data skills is almost as important as computer skills, right? And almost as important as internet skills, right? Because each and every meeting, whether you're in the finance team, L&D team, HR team, sales team, so on and so forth, each and every meeting and decisions in those meetings happen based on data. Right, that's like the buzzword that every senior people will ask you, where is the data, where is the data, right? So if you don't really know how to interpret data, consume data, interpret data, visualize data, and sometimes even storytell on that particular data, it's not possible for you to be effective in the modern working environment, right? So I think that's extremely important, and people should get proficient with that. And unfortunately, I have to add to that, again, I don't mean to do a plug, but unfortunately, there's not enough training that happens on data as a subject. In the upgrad world, of course, in the B2C side of our business, the amount of people taking up data courses are immense, right? But I don't see enough HR folks or L&D folks taking the mandate of training their people on data very, very seriously, right? But I totally agree with you that that is a key skill that is required for somebody that's entering. Project management skills, right? I think just about all work, Mandar, that like you mentioned today is largely project-based work that is going on, right? So if you don't have good project management skills, it's not quite possible for you to execute stuff or get stuff done as effectively as you'd want to, right? And I think people need today exhaustive education on project management, if you ask me, right? And listen, see, the world can build such complex airports, aeroplanes, bridges, tunnels through marvels of project management and engineering, if you ask me, right? So there's no reason why we should not be able to use similar skills to the L&D or HR domain, right? It just requires good training, if you ask me. Yeah, I think that's extremely important, right? In terms of what you're talking about. Yeah. What about people coming straight out of college, right? Just joining the workforce. What do you think are the skills that are critical for across domain? Now this is not about L&D in specific. If you just had to give a piece of advice to somebody joining the workforce today, what would you say are the critical skills that they need?
One is always I'll start with the piece of learning. I think it's important that they keep learning because the eager to apply the learnings back at workplace is very high.
Yeah.
For the people who come out of it's a corporate to campus journey. Let me put it this way: it's not easy, right? You have to let go of your old skin and get into the new one, and you need some solid skills for that. I think what is very critical is feedback, the power of feedback. A lot of people don't see a value of feedback, but I think it has got an immense value to first get a feedback, all sorts of. Second, important for the teams to understand, we call it feed forward these days, and how we can take that feedback forward. Essentially, the important aspect is taking the feedback for the work you do and not mainly at an individual level. I think that's a big shift when you come out of the campus, because always everything good happens to you at the campus, and all of a sudden somebody starts watching you, giving you feedback. You take a sit back and say, oh, somebody's trying to correct me on certain aspects. So I think be open for that. You will see your growth journey happening faster. You will grow faster. Your growth will be accelerated. So one is the feedback. The power of feedback is immense. Second, as I said, embrace the learning aspect. Don't let it go. Keep that curiosity of what you had during your campus. Ask those many questions as you asked there to this part of the world. I think people feel shy to ask questions, but I think it's very important to ask right questions to get clarity. So that's the second bit in terms of be curious. Don't let go of your curiosity. That's a very important skill you need to continue doing the rest of your life. A lot of innovation happens because of the curiosity. That's my third bit. Keep innovating, keep reimagining. Don't come. See, I think the power of the campus students is they get a lot of fresh ideas into the organization. So I think we should really take a plunge on that and see that how really we can reimagining the work in the corporate. And we have this Bhavishya training programs here. We try to get those people who are really different than what we have set of people. That difference is the thought diversity really helps us recalibrate the work we do, recalibrate our purpose, and keep bettering our work, what we do here at Smollan. So I think these are my quick 2 cents in terms of the skills. I think they should bring it to this side when they are out of the campus.
Got it. So number one would be, of course, constant and continuous learning. I think that's very important. I love this. The one quote came to my mind when you were speaking, which says every person must sleep at night smarter than they woke up, right? I love that thought of, sleeping every night smarter than they woke up. And if all of us keep that in mind and become real learning machines, the cumulative growth that we will see from this daily learning is so much, it compounds quite rapidly over a period of time, right? So I like that a lot, which is keep learning. I think on feedback, right? Hillary Clinton has this very nice quote, Mandar, where she says, "Take feedback seriously, don't take feedback personally." Right? You said such a nice use of words from her, right? Because most of us are busy taking feedback personally, and often not taking feedback seriously. And I think if you want to be a successful working professional, you need to really be able to you need to be good at giving feedback for sure, but I think more importantly sometimes need to be good at receiving feedback as well. And the more you receive it, the better it is. And your feedback point, Mandar, also connects to your first point, right? I think when it comes to the corporate world, or any world for that matter, a bulk of your learning happens from the feedback that you receive from your colleagues, from your customers, from your vendors, from your bosses, from your leaders, so on and so forth, right? So I think that's an amazing point. And I think your third one is around curiosity, right? I think never lose the curiosity and zeal and the belief that you can always make stuff better than what it was, right?
Certainly. I
Have
think
I
you
have
know,
I done a good summary
yeah,
of it?
absolutely, absolutely. I think
Yeah,
we covered all.
yeah, got. So, Mandar, you, I'm assuming, have led teams, right, across a large portion of your careers. You become a team leader. From the learning and development lens of what you observed while conducting leadership development programs and leading a team yourself, what would your suggestions be to any people manager? What would your 2 or 3 points be as to what do they need to do to really get the best out of their people?
I think the interesting fact is in today's world of people managers, so called, uh, unfortunately, fortunately, we have a same yardstick to really deal with your team. So I think
Yeah.
I like to do it slightly differently. I think
Mm,
it's very important for you to first understand the word we use, and that's your value as well, aspiration, right? Aspire.
mm, mm,
I was reading through your site. It's
mm,
very important in today's world as a people manager first to understand your own team member's aspiration, what he wants,
mm.
then say about, then it's very easy to link that back to the organization purpose. So I
Got it.
think as I said, the purpose is very important at the workplace, right? And a
Mm,
lot of work we do in the space of uh, very purposeful driven work. I think it's
mm,
very important today. It's not the same it was 10 years back. Why
mm,
people used to come at work? If you look at the World Economic Forum stats, the
mm,
skills which were never existed, like cognitive load, as I said,
mm,
being resilient,
mm,
having work-life balance,
mm,
having work-life balance harmony. Probably
mm,
our parents never thought 10 years, 15 years, 20 years back the way they used to come at the work and the way
mm.
things are now at the work. From a
Yeah,
people manager lens,
yeah.
I think it's very important first to understand those dynamics within
Mm,
the team, have understand the aspiration of your team members.
mm, mm,
Third and most important to me is, I think, as I have already said about it, in terms of that purpose-driven work. Why somebody will work under you if you don't really add value? And
mm,
and the and the most successful thing which comes to my heart is finding a mentor.
mm.
Rather than looking at a people manager, I've always succeeded in my last 15 years of my career with having a great mentor in my life.
Yeah.
Be it my institute, be it my the first job, I
Mm,
can pick up. They were my just dials. Actually,
mm,
I call
mm.
them just dial because at
Ha ha
any
ha.
point
Ha. Yeah.
they were. I know their numbers on my tip of tongue. So those just
Yeah.
dials are very important in your career. Find
Mm,
a mentor. Uh,
mm.
from a people manager lens, I think you should mentor your team. You should coach
Mm.
your. I think
Got it.
that's a very, very important aspect of today's team management essence. I
Got
think
it.
once you do that, don't feed them with the fish.
Mm,
Train them in terms of how to do the fishing. I think your job
mm,
is done.
mm,
That's what most of the people do. They get into the tail mode rather
mm,
than allowing that person to bring up his or own creativity aspect. So these are my
mm,
few things as far as the people manager's role is concerned. Today, they play a very important role. 9 hours people spend time with your people manager.
mm.
Essentially, it's important to hear your employees. Listening is a very important aspect. you can solve by just listening. In fact, I was in one of the safety workshop where the manager had the team to stop doing the suicide. I mean, it can become that serious. So that's what a value of a people manager today we see in the career of people. We might feel that it's just like 8 to 9 hours of work we come together. It goes beyond that. I think if the people manager really understands that uh, and continue doing the purpose-driven work for the organization, both your team will grow, you as an individual you will grow, and never miss out on the power of mentoring or coaching. So I think these are my few cents in terms of the advice here.
Got it. So quick summary. So I think understand the aspirations and the purpose of your people. I think that's very, very important, so that you can in a way align the work, the task, the projects to the aspirations of the people and what their purpose is. I think that's a great point. I think the second one that you spoke about is to I think today is an age of being a coach or a mentor to your team, and that it becomes really valuable in all facets, right? If you can be that coach or mentor to your team. And I think the third one that you spoke about was the power of listening, right? I think I love this thought that says speak in a way where people want to listen to you, and listen in a way where people want to speak to you, right? I think it's important for people to do both these things as far as communication is concerned. So understand aspirations, be a good mentor, coach, and listen to people well.
Yeah, one small story comes to my mind.
Yeah,
So
go ahead, please.
I have a niece and nephew.
Yeah.
So they are now 14, 15 years of age.
Yeah.
He wrote once on the Facebook, LYFISOSM. Life is awesome.
Yeah.
I responded to them, LMAO.
Yeah.
So essentially, they find me very cool, very connected with them. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now the story what I'm saying here is so everyone has got a map of their own world, right? It's very like I have my map of own world, but it's very important to be on the map of their world at times. If you want to be on the map of their world, you need to really understand what that person needs. It becomes so easy as a people manager. If I know, if I'm on the map of my world of my team member, it becomes so easy then to have even the feedback or the conversations which are really tough.
Yeah.
Because he's taking it in the right spirit.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
have connected and we have moved away in that relationship so far. So I think it's very important. Another point which I want to bring it, be on the map of that other person.
Yeah.
And then I think a lot of things seems to be very easy.
Yeah. That's such a so many thoughts come to my head, right? I used to do a lot of leadership training, train a lot of leaders. I don't end up doing it that much now. But for me, and I'm just connecting 2 or 3 points that you spoke about that all alluded towards this direction, right? For me, the most important part of people manager is care, right? Because I think that if you have genuine care, which basically means that you care for the well-being of your team members, I think the team members in 9 out of 10 cases can see the fact that their people manager genuinely cares for them, right? And like I used to say, sometimes genuine care could mean letting a person go, right? Because that particular job may not be a right fit for that person, and he may be really struggling there if you're trying to fit a square into a round shape of sorts, right? Or a round peg into a square, right? So sometimes that could be counseling the person into them understanding that this is not the right role for them. But I think at the heart of everything, whether you understand aspirations or their purpose, the coaching and mentoring, listening, or being on their map, all the points that you mentioned, I think at the heart of all of that is just caring about the genuine care for the well-being of your people.
Brilliant. I think that's one of our value, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Smollan has a value called care.
Yeah.
That's so beautifully put forward by you.
Yeah. And I would typically add saying genuine care, right? So because then if you remember, Mandar, even if you date back to when we were probably in the first 5 years of our career, even if our then leaders or bosses, chided us slightly, or went a little hard on us, we would still be willing to accept that if we knew that at the heart of it was genuine care for our well-being, right? Even
Absolutely.
accepting that slight strong or firm hand from our bosses or leaders becomes easy for us to digest if you know that, right?
Absolutely.
So I think the start for me of leadership is always around genuine care, right? So I
That's
thank you very much. Mandar, I have a
perfect.
slightly trickier question to ask you, and take a little bit of time to answer it, right?
Sure.
If you need. You have a very close view over your last 15 years of also a lot of people in senior management, right? Um, what have you seen across these last 15 years as a pattern? Where does senior managers or senior leadership, and by senior leadership, I mean CXO minus one, CXO minus one levels. What are some of the skills and behaviors generally that you think they need to um, adopt, learn?
I think again an interesting one. My area of interest has been into leadership, as I
Yeah,
said. A lot of work we do in this space together with the teams.
yeah,
Uh, I think essentially the way we all know we are in a VUCA world, right? We
yeah.
translate VUCA. I think it's very important that one is everything is shifting faster. So I think the
Hmm.
first important thing is being resilient. I think that's
Hmm.
what we look in the leaders.
Hmm.
Resilient is quickly getting up back on the toes and doing what's necessary, right?
Hmm.
So being
Hmm.
resilient is very, very important. It also talks about your fixated mindset and the growth mindset approach, right?
Hmm. 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 Hmm.
We can keep sulking about the things happened, but pandemic has really changed the rules of the game, right? So it's
Yeah.
being resilient. I think that's the first thing which comes to my mind. Very, very important in today's. That is one value we see in a leader, right? The second bit is around the critical thinking component. Uh,
Hmm.
if we look at it essentially, critical thinking here in sense of having a very long-sighted view of the decisions you are making and
Hmm.
not being myopic. We have
Hmm.
seen uh, the age has gone where your number of experience and a tenure makes you leader,
Hmm.
right? The people who have
Hmm.
worked 5 years, 6 years are also becoming the CEOs, CEOs of the big giant companies. I think what essentially differentiates them is the critical thinking and the risk appetite. So I
Hmm.
think that's equally important in a growing organization like Smollan. Equally, that
Hmm.
we have people when we onboard at that level, they are more resilient. The
Hmm.
second thing, essentially, they are critical thinkers. And third and most important is the aspect of customer centricity. I think
Hmm.
that plays a very important role in today's world in terms of the way you manage your stakeholders, the way
Got it.
you manage your clients. I think if you have, and that's what I personally love when I'm working in the learning space in terms of how I really build an approach of a customer centricity. Customer
Yeah.
centricity is so deep rooted in today's
Hmm.
world.
Yeah.
The way your clients have expectation, the way your consumer thinks today, the way
Hmm.
your shoppers have a pattern to shop,
Hmm.
everything put together. The moment you put your customers at the center, I think that's the most beautiful skill anyone can bring in on the table.
Amazing.
It's a little softer skill, but I think it has a massive, this thing in terms of building a relationship with your clients. So I think
Hmm.
critical thinking, uh, customer centricity, and as I said, being resilient. These are top of mind virtues which comes to my mind, essential for today's leader to operate in any point of time. Of course, followed by that, you should be uh, incisive. You should be more ideative. And ideative
Hmm.
again is a very important skill. Looking at problems from very different dimensions, looking at the same
Hmm.
problem and
Hmm.
coming up with various ideas to
Hmm.
cater to that problem. I think
Hmm.
it's very, very important.
Hmm.
The fluency of ideas flowing into your work stream, uh, that really fosters your creativity aspect. And then you
Hmm.
innovate and reimagine the entire work you are doing together as a team, as a cohort, as an organization. So I think
Hmm.
equally important to have that ideative mindset. especially in the retail side of the world, where you want better every day, keep improving the work you do for your brands.
Excellent, excellent. So in your opinion, just from your experience of 15 years, you see that at senior levels, resilience is extremely important. I couldn't agree with you. I couldn't agree with you more. I think just in just about every field, whether it's business, sports, I guess politics, arts, it doesn't matter what field you're in. The one virtue which is extremely important is that of resilience, your ability to bounce back quickly in a way from setbacks. I think you spoke again. I see a common passion that you have towards learning, right? So the fixed versus the growth mindset that you spoke about. Critical thinking, I think you threw some very nice light on the ability for people, and in a later part you also spoke about ideating. So I think you spoke about critical thinking and also creative thinking, right? Put together. So really the leader's ability to do both those things, which also involves not just short-term thinking, but having a long-term understanding of how your decisions could play out in some way. And I think customer centricity, whether it's the internal customers that you spoke about or whether it's your external customers, I think that is something that all leaders at every level, I'm assuming, need to develop. Yeah. Interesting, Mandar. Mandar, what's the road ahead for you? What are some of the things that you are looking forward to doing over the next 5 years?
That's a good one. And okay, I think first thing is enabling the learning bit in terms of making learning available for everybody in the organization. That's my first aim. Be it at the last mile. We do a lot of last mile execution here at Smollan. So it's very important. By virtue of our business, a lot of work happens and for the last mile people, right? The sales people who are standing and doing the work for us in the field. So I think it's very important that how we really craft a solution for them. That's what my next couple of years, I will be spending a lot of time talking to various clients, and you will see there's a lot of programs available for your white collar people. But still the blue collar people, which is the maximum, I think 40% of your work gen would be right now in the blue collar space. Very few people really take the effort to design something for them. So I think learning doesn't stop only at white collar. For me, it's about how I shift and make that really inspiring thing for the people at the last mile. So I think I'm going to spend a lot of time there crafting solutions for their betterment. As I said, we are more purpose-driven organization. That is something provides food for their family. So I think that's one noble cause we all are here working in learning. The second bit, I think it's very important in terms of the upskilling and the reskilling part. As I said, by 2030, a lot of things would be taken over by machines. What it essentially means, if you want your people to be relevant, they need to own those skills which never existed. Like we got a person in the team which is more on the learning experience part. So she is working on the content along with me and also creating more of a learning experience for our people, which I never thought 5 years back that we would even try and get a role who will really look at such aspect of the learning. So I think that's second area where to ensure that whichever level you are at within the organization, how your learning experience has been. I think that talks a lot about how you want to accelerate growth for your organization, right?
Got it.
So that's the second bit area in terms of really making learning very contextual, role-based, available anytime, anywhere, so that people just plug and play, and it caters to all sort of learners. So that's and third, I think the value generation part, the ROI part of all the work we've been putting together, it's very important to see where and how it is adding value to your business. I'm a personal fan of working very collaborative with business. If business is not seeing value, again, I'm saying this team will become redundant. And it's very important saying that how the goals of the business sit together, collaborate with your strategy for next 7 years in learning space. So I think there I'm going to spend a lot of my time. And of course, leadership comes without saying that there will be very new age leadership programs like under the theme of leaders developing leaders. Now we're doing an off academy program where my business heads are training the people under them. My female colleagues are working and training the female colleagues under them. I think that leaders developing leaders is going to be a very strong formula for success for our people in coming time is small. And I can assure Swapnil, and I'm sure I see a lot of collaboration and work gonna happen with upGrad and other few partnerships what we have in place.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
that's what my next 5-7 years I'm really going to be me and my team occupied with.
Got it. It's so interesting. I have a few comments to make on this, right? So
Sure.
I love the fact that you spoke about the blue collar versus the white collar, right? Because I keep saying this, as of course a company, we have programs, NSDC driven skilling, vocational skilling programs, and we also do the world's first doctorate in generative AI and emerging technology, right? So the width of what upGrad does as a group is so wide. That said, I think it gives me great satisfaction often to do stuff in the vocational or the blue collar thing, because I know, and I'm sure so do you, the impact that sometimes those trainings have is often life changing for that particular person, right? Because maybe he's not had those skills and those thoughts. He's not been exposed to that, given probably a certain quality of school that he went to, or a lack sometimes of being able to go to college due to their circumstances, right? So a lot of the work that we do in that space is often life changing for that people, right? So it gives me a deep sense of satisfaction. All learning does, but especially learning in this particular area has gives me that satisfaction. And therefore I tell everybody in the learning and development industry, saying, please don't treat that as some kind of a second citizen class of learning and development that you're doing, right? Because
Yeah.
yeah, right, don't give it that secondary treatment. As a matter of fact, give it the primary treatment, because that is really challenging work as a learning and development professional, right, for you to
Absolutely.
execute. So I'm glad we share sentiment there. The other thing that I was smiling through that is your focus on learning experience, like you mentioned, right? I was sharing this with one of my customers. I was just telling them that your LXP or LMS by and large needs to look like YouTube, right? If it doesn't look like YouTube, and your programs are not titled like YouTube, and you don't have great thumbnails there like YouTube does, you essentially lost the battle, right, to
Absolutely.
YouTube. And if I'm not mistaken, maybe I get this stat incorrect, but I think education as a category, if I'm not mistaken, on YouTube is number 2 or number 3, right?
Yeah.
As a category. So it's clearly people voluntarily go and learn so much on YouTube, right?
So
So why do they not learn as much on our LMS or LXP platform? Then one of the reasons is we don't focus that much on the learning experience. And unless we start making especially our digital learning, right, unless we start making it as engaging as YouTube, you're not going to have people coming and logging into that. And the minute you do that, people are going to come there, right? We have so much of
certainly.
experience with our clients where we've transformed their e-learning, right, to make it so much more engaging, so that it looks like a Instagram reels or a shorts or a nice video, and boy, people are loving it and learning from it as well. So I'm glad we share sentiment there. And of course, your third point on saying, ROI, right? Let's be outcome focused, let's be business focused in some way. I think those are amazing things to work on, Mandar, over the next 5 years. I'm sure you're going to add immense value in those areas.
Yeah, thanks, Abhil. And I think you picked up a right point on LXP. I've seen a big
Yeah.
plunge there. I think
Yeah.
not to miss out mentioning that the small videos, reels, in fact, reels, the YouTube time has also gone down. Look at the way the things
Yeah.
are shifting.
Yeah.
People really want to quickly grab a skill and get going, apply, and keep improving their day-to-day work
Yeah.
as you said.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think, yeah.
No, no
Uh,
concept.
so it's really important in terms of the lot thrust on the self-learning part, uh,
Mm.
which I said on the second point. We want to go into really focus on building the videos, uh, quickly putting the small snippets and nuggets. I think that's going to be the way of learning in coming next 5 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Correct.
yeah, you had a
Yeah,
point.
and I was just going to say, I've also realized, Mandar, and I'm sure so have you, is that not everything needs to be short as well. right? There is a place for there's a place for a movie which is a 2-hour thing. There's a place for a movie that you want to watch in a theater, and there's a place for reels, and there is a place for YouTube, the longer videos, and there's a place for everything. Exactly like that in learning also, there's a place for everything, right? Because a lot of, I think, people are erring towards the wrong side of saying, "Arey, everything needs to be short," and I'm like, no, 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 no. Then you're again losing the plot there. If you try to make everything short, then people also don't feel like they've learned anything concrete, right? In that way. So you need to have, I guess, a proper, blend, and something that you spoke about earlier, right? A blended approach is what we need to have. But I think learning, we need to focus on the learning experience, right? There's no doubt in my mind about focusing on the learning experience. I was on LinkedIn, Mandar, the other day, and I just saw one quote that said, if you don't find science interesting, you just learn through the wrong teacher, right? I forgot who said that, because it is true, right? That if you had a great teacher in science, he could make science so interesting, changing your absolute perspective towards it. And exactly like that, I think what's true of science is true of economics, right? Or it's true of leadership, or it's true of everything else, right? And so in the end, that learning experience is very important. And just one final thing, right? So I keep telling the team, whether rubber meets the road is where your facilitator or trainer comes into the picture, right?
So well said.
Yeah. So in the end, you can have all the amazing content, but you can never
Be a
replace the role
facilitator.
of a teacher,
Yeah,
right?
I echo the same
Or
sentiment.
yeah, or a facilitator. Anyway, Mandar, it was a pleasure talking to you. You've shared such amazingly insightful things through this conversation. Any last thing that you'd like to end this particular interview on, or this conversation?
One is definitely I look forward to really collaborate with a lot of partners what we have in place.
Yeah.
And second is important to have plug and play kind of modules. And third is essentially a lot of gig I've been talking about. So I think we need to work closely in terms of how you upskill it, and there are very different nuances between the gig economy. So I think these are few of the things I think we should keep the topic on, and I will like to listen in some of the next videos, some work people doing in this space. But I think I thoroughly enjoyed having this conversation with you, Swapnil. Once again, thanks for having me on the show.
Thank you very much, Mandar. I thank you very much, and I hope to see you soon. But really, really thank you for joining us.
Thanks.